So somebody else has the good taste that Lauren has. And I
No.
choose to like it.
Did I ever show you the closet, my closet?
No.
Well, Dennis knows how giant those closets are, not type of.
Closet.
Set up. Run, baby, run.
I can picture it.
Sir? This meeting will come to order. This is the Puyallup City Council. This is the meeting for April 2nd. And with that, I'd like to ask everyone to please rise for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Could we have clerk please read the roll?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Johnson,
Present.
Deputy Mayor King,
Present.
Councilmember Gilliam,
Present.
Councilmember Whitting,
Present.
Councilmember Dorr,
Present.
Councilmember Adler,
Present.
Mayor Castema.
Present. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge any students we may have in the audience. I see some fairly young faces in the audience. If you'd like to stand up and tell us who you are, we'd like to acknowledge your presence.
I'm James Bishop. We're here for Puyallup High School to do a report for civics class.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. We like to acknowledge the youth every time at the beginning of these meetings because kind of secretly, we want you to do our job one of these days. So we want to make sure you're very well appreciated. Thank you for being here. If there's any kind of paperwork that you need to have signed, just approach any one of the council members. Again, thank you for being here. Any other youth here? Okay. You look very, yes, go ahead. Oh, excellent. You said Rogers High School? Okay, excellent. Is this your mother? We thought she was a student. So anyway. Again, thank you for being here. It's very great that you would flatter us with your presence. Appreciate that. With that, I'd like to get the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you. We'll move on to number 2, consideration of the minutes for approval of February 27th, 2024. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, now let's move on to citizen comments. I'd like to have the city clerk read the guidelines for comments. Just keep in mind on a very simple terms. If you'd like to make comments, please go ahead and fill out one of these forms. They're over there and he'll go ahead and get that to me. And I just basically start at the top of the stack and everybody has 3 minutes to testify or provide their public comment and I go right through the list. So with that, city clerk, please read the guidelines.
Thank you, sir. This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Thank you. Keep in mind that when you do hit the 3-minute mark, I will then ask you to close your comments. I do not mean to be rude at all. It's just that we have to treat everyone fairly and the same as they come before the city council. With that, first individual, John Hopkins.
John Hopkins, District 1. I'm going to pose a very simple question. Is it worth doing a commercial remodel in town at this point? Can you make money at it? Can you even break even? Is it worth doing? Well, it used to be well worth doing because in the past, you could actually make money at it. And when you saw that happening, everyone jumped in. And what we had was revitalization. At the moment, we don't have that. You know, we see way too many buildings are just decaying, and we see people who have abandoned their project. They've run into some obstacles is what it comes down to. Now, a lot of this stuff is beyond your control. For example, one of the impacts is that subcontractors and contractors are charging a huge amount of money, as everyone pretty much knows, and that's closed the margins down to practically nothing. So all it takes is one change order, one hidden condition, and there you are in a bind. But there's a couple of other things that you do have a degree of control over. One of them is the code required upgrades, and those will get you. No, you don't actually expect them. For example, let's say you want to be a dog groomer. You go in and say, hey, I want to groom dogs. Well, you're going to have to improve your HVAC system. Sorry, it's going to cost you $50,000, and you need to get an engineer to design it for you. Whoa, you know, right there and then, your project has probably gone sideways. And if you got any brains at all, you'll just bail out. You shouldn't do it. You can't do it because you will go broke. But the one that really gets people, surprises people, I think, because it sneaks up on you, is your holding costs on a project. You know, if it takes you 3 years, like it did me, mind you, I should have taken less. Well, you kind of think about it, and your holding costs on $1 million project is about 10% a year. Think about it, you know, the cost of borrowing the money, your property tax, you've still got to pay utilities. And then there's that minor thing called insurance, builder's risk. That's not cheap.
30 seconds.
So you're at about 10%. So on $1 million job, that's 100,000 a year. If you go 3 years, that's 300,000. Now tell me, how on earth could you possibly make money if you're sitting on something for 3 years? At best, you could do it in 2 years, but that's still 200,000, and that turns the job into nothing but red ink. So I know you care about this one, and thank you for your concerns.
Thank you for your comments. Let's move on to Paul Rumich.
Thank you, Mayor Castma. So I know for the past 10 months, I've come to every city council session and planning commission session. And believe it or not, I do have a life outside of this. So last week and then this week, you know, in middle March Madness, it's hard to turn around something like this. So in front of you, you have a packet. And it's just my rough design of the current state as well as kind of a planned state for 12th Street Southwest and West Pioneer, right in front of Maplewood Elementary. So, I mean, the plan is, normally, we save things for the public hearing, but this is about the design rather than the actual right-of-way vacation. So the design is, the plan is, and the bid was for expanding the road right in front of Maplewood. It's already 16 feet wide in the westbound lane of West Pioneer and the northbound lane of 12th Street. So that is 33 to 60% larger than what is recommended for a highway or for a city street, respectively. So there's more, widening the road won't really change much. It will, increase the curb radii, which is the ultimate point of it, but there's ways to do that without increasing the width of the road. And I don't feel like those options were discussed enough. So there's a lot in these packets. I hope I can kind of talk it over. But when you start cutting the corner, right, more drivers will start cutting the corner, right? So it's initially for trucks. That was the purpose of this. But that's not enough for the average driver, because the average driver is driving a car. So they'll be taking that corner a lot faster right in front of elementary school. They'll be taking that corner with a lot less reaction time, less likely to stop because it's an easier turn. So, coming up on a red light or maybe a long yellow, they'll keep plowing through and not really checking for pedestrians. So that's a factor there as well. And WashDOT just put out a study last year, or within the past year, that showed that drivers are speeding way more in school zones than the years prior, even like 2 years prior. So it's dangerous. It's just dangerous, and this is already a wide road, and wide
30
roads
seconds.
are attached to high speeds. So there are ways to increase or make the road easier to navigate for large trucks without having to increase the road space, and also at the same time make it safer for pedestrians right in front of a middle school on a crosswalk that literally leads you up to the doorstep of that elementary school. So it's a little frustrating that how easy it is for cars to take space away from this pedestrians, but how
Mr. Mayor, the
hard it
speaker's
is
reached
to
3
get that
minutes.
space back. So that's why I provide this packet here, and I appreciate if you gave it a look through. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. Doc Hanson.
Good evening, Doc Hanson, District 2. I'll try to make this very brief. It was brought to my attention, and I forgot this, I know it, but in order for the fireworks code to go into effect, you'd have to pass it this year before July 4th. If you pass it before July 4th this year, it won't go into effect until 2025. If you don't, it's 2026. That's 2 more years of fireworks. And that's if you decide you want to do this. One of the things that I was, now I'll have to remember what I was thinking about. There was some statement regarding, there's a number of veterans that are in favor of fireworks. And I've talked to a number of veterans about that. And they have no problem with fireworks as long as they know where it is. And that's a big issue that we're talking about. There were a lot of people within Federal Way that have veterans that had a problem with somebody blowing up above their heads, and they didn't know where it was coming from. If they know where it's coming from, they don't have a problem. So I hope, and my plea is that you take these into consideration as a study session and make a consideration that if you don't do it this year, you're not going to have an effective, or your code is not going to go into effect until 2026. Thank you.
Thank you. John Palmer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council member. Good to see you again tonight. I have a few follow-up comments on the EIS from our meeting a couple weeks ago. And just wanted to follow up. First of all, appreciate everybody listening to the few voices that were here to express their concern, and almost anybody you talk to, especially out in the east side of Puyallup. has a lot to say about this, and it's not good. But staff has a lot of work to do, moving forward to do the final EIS. And there's a couple of things I just wanted to highlight. One is traffic, and I didn't have a chance to talk about this last time. I'm almost pretty darn sure that the traffic study needs to be updated and redone. The problem with it, it was briefly mentioned that the traffic counts were done during COVID. And so the base of the model is really not reflective of the current existing conditions. And that's a problem, because the way the model works, you do a model, you calculate what the existing condition is, and then you apply the project, and then you calculate what happens, right? So, and digging into the details of the traffic is like, some things just aren't right here, and I couldn't put my finger on it. But one metric in particular really showed this problem clearly. So the calibrated model says during the peak PM traffic from Sumner at 410 to travel on East Main and then up Shaw Road up to 39 takes 7 minutes. So that's one metric that you can actually go measure, just the layperson. So I measured it, and it took me 15 minutes one day, 13 minutes the other day, and 17 minutes the other day. 3 different days, well, twice as much as what the calibrated model is. So that's just an example that the model has a fundamental problem. So it needs to be updated to reflect that. The other thing, there's the Puyallup tribe weighed in pretty significantly. So there's a lot of stormwater issues that will be needed to dealt with. And finally, just on the preferred alternative, my only thoughts there, again, it needs to be specific and prescriptive. And I'm confident that's where this will head. But it's not a lot of shoulda, coulda, woulda stuff. This final EIS with the preferred alternative and mitigations need to describe what is needed to avoid and minimize the significant impacts. And that's the expectation.
30 seconds.
And I know there's angst with the county, but the expectation is both the county and the city will implement this through the permitting process. And I think we should go into this, with that expectation. Because I think a well-done EIS, it would be highly unusual for an agency not to follow an EIS. So I think that's the expectation. So just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate those comments. Edward Atsuka.
Well, good evening, Mayor Castama, Deputy Mayor Kings, City Council members, City Manager Kirkley, and other members of the City of Puyallup, and as well as the Parks and Recreation Department and its staff. On behalf of the Pickleball Advisory Committee and over 6,000 plus pickleball members and the Puget Sound Pierce County community, we just want to say thank you for the progress on the additional pickleball courts. Thank you very much. We appreciate that you look and we look forward to working with you as the pickleball sports community participation continues to grow on an average exceeding over 223.5%. You have over 40 million pickleball players today, and it's growing exponentially. Just over the last 3 years was at 223.5%, and continues to surpass everyone's expectation on the fastest growing sport nationwide. It has now become a multi-billion-dollar industry just on pickleball. Matter of fact, who is the newest player that just came in? Serena Williams is now going to be on the Major League Pickleball. So it's starting. It's exciting. So we continue on our journey to achieve the highest and best use of our natural resources, meet the financial obligations and responsibilities of the city's monetary resources, which is the taxpayers, your constituents. It's a huge responsibility, and we just want to say thank you and take the time to just say we appreciate it. So if the city of Puyallup want to work together with the business community and its constituents, it may be able to capitalize on becoming the capital of pickleball in the United States. That's huge. But remember, it started here in Washington State in Bainbridge Island. Washington State designated it as a official sport. It is now being participated in collegiate sport and will soon be a official collegiate sport like football, basketball, golf, and tennis. And it will then eventually go into high school.
30 seconds.
Thank you. So anyways, thank you for your time. If anyone has any questions, please reach out to me. I will be available to speak with you at any time. Just you give me a call. And I would offer any council members and their family pickleball lessons at any time. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. I can tell you that I played the first pickleball game of my life at the ceremony opening the latest ones in Puyallup. And I went out and proudly bought myself a couple pair of pickleball paddles. I thought you were going to say the newest person wasn't Serena Williams, but I thought you were going to say it was me. But anyway, thank you. With that, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. That's item number 3. Oh, by the way, is there anyone else, I apologize, who would like to make a comment publicly who did not happen to sign up? If not, we will now move on to item number 3, the consent agenda. Is there any item on the consent agenda that a council member would like to move for discussion? Okay, hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Okay, let's move on. Number 4 on our agenda, ordinances. This is the second reading of an ordinance for a proposed alley right-of-way vacation north of West Pioneer and east of 12th Street Southwest. Staff, could you please come forward, apprise us of this once more? And I understand it's a second reading, but please familiarize everyone on the committee.
Yes, Hans Hunger, city engineer. So this is tied to our capital project where we are obtaining some property rights and temporary easements for an intersection improvement. In working with the property owner affected, a business owner, they identified that there could be some unopened right of way that the city, if they could relinquish that to the property owner, then could compensate for their loss of parking on as the project widens out the curb radii. We did consult with Public Works, Scott Hill, to see if there's any need, and this unopened right of way is something that was created back in 1929. It doesn't lead anywhere. It's never been opened. It looks everything like a driveway that doesn't terminate anywhere. So this Scott determined the city has no need for this property. In fact, for our standpoint, it doesn't need to be in the city's ownership as part of our right of way because we never plan to use that for anything. Even conceptually, it's hard to imagine what would be used. So in working with the property owner, we established a memorandum of understanding with them that we would pursue this vacation. Of course, there's no promises. This is up to the council to decide on this there. And if this is approved, then the Pierce County assessor or the auditor would determine which property this is going to. But this is something that looks like it'll go to the property to the east. It's a 10-foot unopened alley.
Any questions by members? Hans, I have a question. We had someone testify this evening and came forward with I'm sure you probably had a chance to read that. That does tangentially pertain to this, correct?
Correct, yes.
Can
The same
you-
project?
Can you provide your observation? Or I know this is kind of putting you on the spot and I feel kind of bad about doing that, but we are in second reading. So I'd like to ask what your impression of this document is.
Yeah, when I first read this, the characterization of this is a road widening, maybe it's getting down to semantics. The curb alignment on both Pioneer and on 12th is staying exactly in the same alignment. What we're doing is widening out the curb radii, so making it easier for a vehicle to make a turning movement on there. The driver for this project really is that the signal pole on the northwest corner has been hit 3 separate times and damaging the pole, at one point taking the pole down. And so trying to make that intersection more per city standards, which we have a standard radii that we use on these intersections. The radii really is tied to also the road classification. When you have busier roads like West Pioneer and 12th, you start to have more truck movement in those things, and those trucks need enough room to turn. So as we're replacing the signal and moving the poles back behind the sidewalk to get them further away, at that point, when you're touching the intersection, it's good to also bring it up to the city standard. And so that's what we're doing here.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that citizen who testified tonight regarding speed and taking the turns at a higher rate of speed, has that been studied? Has that been thought about, talked about, looked at? And is there any truth behind that?
Well, I would say what I heard was a lot of very generalities about speed increasing. Now, I won't dispute that. I don't have a lot of data to show that, but anecdotally, I do realize that speeds have increased, and many cities, including our own, look for safety plans of a variety of ways to slow down traffic. That's both with capital improvement and the design of things, but it's also on some policies and operation enforcement. So there's a lot of different factors at play there to slow down. Since this is a signalized intersection, we rely heavily on the operation of the signal. Red lights don't coincide with allowing, certain pedestrian movements there. So there is some of that, but it needs to be looked at more in depth, Deputy Mayor, I would say. I think the city as a whole needs to look at kind of a safety action plan of the different elements that are allowing speeds to increase, and what are some targeted strategies for reducing that speed, including sometimes the design standards.
Because I assume with the upgraded intersection corner of the radii changing and all of those things that go along with that upgrade, I'm assuming that additional safety precautions, safety lighting mechanisms for crosswalks and things like that, that'll be upgraded as well.
Yes, illumination will be part of this. Upgrading the ADA ramps there, upgrading the pedestrian push button signals so they're more accessible, so a wheelchair doesn't have to go off the pathway to try to reach one of these, or get too close to the curb to reach one. All those are part of meeting our city standards at the intersection.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, the mayor would like to entertain a motion to pass this on second reading. Do I hear such a motion?
A second.
I'll make the motion and then you can
There
take
we
the
go.
second.
Okay,
go.
good. I like that. Okay, it's been made and seconded. We are now open for discussion. Do I hear any discussion by members? If not, we will proceed to the vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, we'll now have roll call.
Deputy Mayor King,
Aye.
Councilmember Gilliam,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitting,
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr,
Aye.
Councilmember Adler,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Castema.
Aye. Okay, we'll now move on to item number 4B. This is a second reading of an ordinance amending Municipal Code 2.29 regarding the review authority of the Design and Review and Historic Preservation Board. I'd like to have staff come forward. Again, I understand it's second reading, but nevertheless, if you could familiarize us with this particular ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor Castema, members of council, Katie Baker, Planning Manager. The ordinance before you tonight is a code amendment to create an administrative review process for design review of our downtown design guidelines and mixed-use design review overlay, so that small projects would be able to be reviewed administratively rather than going to the Design Review and Historic Preservation Board. In general, the threshold would allow for projects that have up to 4,000 square feet of commercial space, up to 6 units in a single building, and up to 10 units on site, no more than 10,000 square feet total square footage of the proposed development proposal. So that's the proposal before you, the code amendment before you, and I welcome any questions.
Okay, are there any questions by members? Katie, I have a question. And that's regarding the quality of the standards. We are maintaining my whole concern about going administrative as opposed to sticking with the design review historic preservation board has been whether or not we're going to compromise on quality standards. Can you kind of apprise us of whether that's worthy of my concern?
The staff would implement the design review standards as they are written, so there's no changes being proposed to the standards themselves. This is just who is doing the review, and staff feels, I'm confident in my staff that they have the capability of applying the standards as written.
Okay. And following through with that, is there an implication that the design review and historic preservation board go beyond what is in fact actually written?
The design standards are written to be somewhat flexible, so there is often a back and forth between the board and the applicant in trying to achieve the intent of the design standards, but I would not say that they necessarily go beyond what's written, but there's some negotiation involved at times.
Will that negotiation still now take place with a staff member, or how will that be? Because it's still, the code itself has not been revised and still has that subjectivity. So will that be a give and take between staff member and the person getting the permit?
That could be a possibility for these smaller projects. But we would do our best to use the precedent that the prior board decisions have set for us, to kind of follow those decisions that have already been established.
Okay. Finally, my concern is that, we have two different areas. We have the downtown area, which is subject to these standards, and we have the South Hill area, both very distinct, I would say, historically. I mean, when you look at the actual ages and hence architecturally, should we be concerned of the fact that we have a historically sensitive area as opposed to a more modern area? Will we see the same standards applied both areas and hence lose that historic aspect?
No, the same standards would not be applied for the most part. Downtown has its own set of design guidelines. South Hill, for the most part, is under the mixed use design review overlay, which has a slightly different set of standards. There are a few portions of South Hill that are zoned multifamily, where we do apply the downtown design guidelines, but so if anything, that's a more it's specific to those multifamily zones.
Okay. Okay, are there any further questions by council members? If there are none, I'd like to entertain a second reading motion to adopt by second reading the ordinance regarding the review authority of the Design Review and Historic Preservation Board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We will have discussion now. Seeing no discussion, we'll go straight to a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, with that, we will now go ahead and take roll call.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Gillum,
Yay.
Councilmember Whitting,
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr,
Nay.
Councilmember Adler,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King,
Aye.
Mayor Kestema.
Aye. Okay, will city clerk please read that?
Yes, sir. So that vote passed 6-1.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to 4C. This is the first reading of an ordinance approving the inclusion of the building at 210 Fifth Street Southwest on the city's Puyallup Register of Historic Places. And let's say, oh, hi there. We've never had you come before the council, I believe, correct?
I've been up here before.
Oh, you have? I
Yes.
apologize.
No, it's okay.
My mistake. Well, please go ahead.
All right.
Hello, my name is Nabila Comstock. I am a planner with Development and Permitting Services. Tonight, I will be presenting the nomination of Christ Episcopal Church at 210 Fifth Street Southwest to be listed on Puyallup's local historic register. To start us off, the process for nominating a property to the historic register begins with the applicant submitting a nomination form to the city. Staff then schedules a public hearing with the Design Review Board for a review of the application. And immediately following the public hearing, staff anticipates the board to deliberate and vote on a recommendation to forward to City Council, which brings us where we are today, where City Council reviews the application and the board's recommendation. Council has the option to approve or modify the board's recommendation, reject the board's recommendation, or remand the board's recommendation back to the board for further consideration. So for some background on the project, in late 2022, the city of Puyallup did outreach to eligible properties for listing on the local historic register as a part of a former grant project. The grant project was completed last year, but as a result of our outreach, we received this application for the nomination of Christ Episcopal Church. On January 18th of this year, staff presented the board with the interested property, and the board did not express any concerns as to whether or not the church met the criteria for inclusion. And on February 29th of this year, a public hearing was held with the board, who recommended approval by a vote of 4-0 to recommend to City Council. The nomination form for this property was prepared with the intention of protecting the exterior of the structure only and not the interior, which means that future changes to the interior of the building would not require a certificate of appropriateness. So for some application information, the church is located at 210 Fifth Street Southwest and is located between West Meeker and West Pioneer. The applicant for this nomination is John Hopkins, who applied on behalf of Christ Episcopal Church. And so for the building itself, the church at 210 Fifth Street Southwest was constructed in 1926. It was designed and constructed as a Tudor Revival architecture and is characterized by its brick facade, stained glass windows, and bell tower with a copper roof. The church is approximately 6,600 square feet and was designed by architects Harold Whitehouse and Ernest Price of Spokane, Washington. And the church was also listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1994. So in order to be listed on the local historic register, a structure must meet the review criteria, which are that it is significantly associated with the history, architecture, archaeology, engineering, or cultural heritage of the community, that it has integrity, that it is at least 50 years old or of lesser age with exceptional importance, and that it falls into at least one of the categories listed in our municipal code. So Christ Episcopal Church was originally established in 1882 and finished construction in 1886. The church was originally in a wood building on a property purchased by and donated by Hugh Crockett, who was a prominent member of the congregation. Hugh's wife, Rachel, was also a key member of the congregation and secured the donation of the church bell from a ladies' flower guild in San Francisco. The bell made its way to Puyallup via a journey around Cape Horn and was installed in the original church in 1889. In time, the congregation outgrew the original building, and the current property at 210 Fifth Street Southwest was purchased by two members of the church. The present-day church was built in 1926 and again was designed by architects Harold Whitehouse and Ernest Price from Spokane. The church was designed and constructed as a Tudor Revival architecture and is characterized by its brick facade, gabled nave, steeply pitched roof, stained glass windows, and its bell tower. Over time, the church has seen installations of many of its stained glass windows, most of which were designed by an American stained glass designer, Charles Connick, and many of the windows were installed in memoriam of members of the church's congregation. And so based on the research conducted and outlined in the nomination form, staff found that the church is significantly associated with the history, architecture, and cultural heritage of the community. So ultimately, staff finds that the church meets the criteria for designation on the local historic register, as it is architecturally significant, having been designed by Whitehouse and Price, who was noted in the National Register of Historic Places form, have mastered Tudor Revival design style. In addition to this, the church is significantly associated with local history and heritage due to the community's congregation growth, the dedication of its stained glass windows in memoriam of its members, and its original establishment, which was feasible due to the donation by congregation member Hugh Crockett. It has retained its integrity by retaining the Tudor Revival style architecture throughout its expansions, which include the addition of its second floor, the expansion of its sanctuary, and as well as the 1960s brick bell tower addition. So for number 3, the church is greater than 50 years old, having been built in 1926. And finally, it falls under 5 of the categories for listing, which include that it is associated with events that had a significant contribution to local history. Its original establishment in 1882 has resulted in longstanding significance in the community, which can be seen in the structure itself through the contributions by its members. So staff finds that the church is a physical representation and mirror of Puyallup's growing community. The church also embodies distinctive architectural features, as it is an example of Tudor Revival style architecture. It includes outstanding work of a designer who has made substantial contribution to the art, as many of the stained glass windows were designed by early 20th century American stained glass designer Charles Connick. It exemplifies special elements of the city's architectural history through its architecture style, which, as noted in the National Register of Historic Places form from 1994, it has architectural values that stand apart from other religious buildings in Puyallup and compares favorably with Whitehouse and Price's Tudor Revival projects. And lastly, the church is associated with lives or persons significant in local history, such as Hugh Crockett, who purchased and donated the original church property, as well as his wife, Rachel Crockett, who acquired the historic bell in 1889. And that bell is currently in the present-day church and was installed as part of the 1960 bell tower addition. At the public hearing on February 29th with the Design Review and Historic Preservation Board, the board agreed with staff's analysis of the required criteria and recommended approval to council for the request to list Christ Episcopal Church to the Historic Register. Tonight, the council may approve the request and first reading of an ordinance consistent with the board recommendation. They may modify the board's recommendation, reject the board's recommendation and deny the request, or remand back to the board for further consideration. That's all for my presentation tonight, but please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. We have one question, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Abilia, thanks for the great presentation. Very, very thorough, and quite frankly, impressive in terms of just really hearing about the history of the church. I had no idea. The data that you presented here really makes that building more special to me. I've always admired that building. When I drive by it, it looks like a little fairy tale place. It's really, and they keep it up so nicely. The only thing I would ask from the mayor and my colleagues, only because of just, efficiency. I know we have a process, but I mean, staff approached the church on this a while back to ask if they were interested. The church board has met and has unanimously agreed that they would like to go into this national or this local historical designation. It certainly has history that not too many protesters are going to say it doesn't qualify. And so it would seem that it not only fully qualifies, but it's almost a shoe-in. I guess I would ask the mayor and my colleagues, I know we have a process, we might consider modifying this to a first and second reading and being done with it tonight, but I don't want to buck the bureaucratic process, but I just don't see anything between now and second reading that's going to be a surprise unless somebody had some ideas and why we couldn't just make this happen tonight. We have the ability to do it. We have the authority to do it, and it seems somewhat efficient. So we could go through a second reading, but I might entertain some thoughts on that. But other than that, I'm excited to see this move forward and be passed. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation, and in particular, I very much liked the format of your PowerPoint. It was really easy to understand and digest. And, you know, everyone has an opinion about how PowerPoint should be and how much text to use, but this was very well done. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dorr. Oh, pardon me? Well, go ahead. That's fine.
So I am supportive of this, putting this on the historic preservation. I don't support suspending the rules and having second reading, as there is no time element that I can see that requires that. So I don't think not allowing the public to, this is the first public presentation that they have seen on this. So I would want to follow our process and have the public comment, should they decide to, at the next council meeting. If there was a time crunch element to this, that makes sense to me. But so I would move approval for first reading, but not second. Thank you.
Okay, there's been a motion that has been made. Do I hear a second on that?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Now let's go to Councilmember Whitting.
I just had one clarifying question, that having this on the historical board, you said that it preserves the exterior of the building. I just wanted to inquire whether or not those beautiful stained glass windows are considered part of the exterior, because I certainly want to preserve those.
Yes, they would be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your questions. I have a question. Could you just apprise everyone here and the public, what does it mean to get on the historic registry? What type of benefits come to the community for doing that? What kind of benefits go to the recipient of that? And, you know, does it become a tourist attraction? Please tell us everything, all the benefits that go with it.
Yeah, so typically for a property owner, if we're going to talk about specifically the property owner, there would be a option to have a local tax incentive, but specifically for the church, they would not qualify for a tax incentive. But otherwise, the benefit of listing a property on the historic register, I say, would be for the community. To be able to memorialize the history of Puyallup for future generations. People would be able to have that more access to information about the history like we presented here tonight. Tour wise, I don't know, you know, maybe the church or any other structure would be willing to offer that to the community. But otherwise, I think it's just a great way to make sure we memorialize our history out here.
Thank you. Is there a list of all of the structures that are on the historic preservation listing in Puyallup that we can have access to?
Yes, our historic preservation plan, I can't quite remember when it was updated, but it has the majority of the listed properties on there. Otherwise, I believe our website is up to date. We listed 3 within the last 2 years, and I will update it, you know, if this gets listed. So we will have a full list on the website as well.
Okay, and by a full list, you mean everything that has been there in the
Yes.
past? Okay,
I will
good.
make sure of that.
Well, I'm going to look at that. I think that's excellent. Thank you for the work that you did, and that was an excellent presentation. Now, hearing no further discussion, there is a motion on the table for first reading of this, and it's been seconded. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, first reading, it has passed. Thank you very much.
you.
Let's move on to section number 5 on resolutions. This is a resolution authorizing interlocal agreement for Rainier Communications Commission. Our city attorney, Joe Beck, will speak from the dais on this issue.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a interlocal agreement that is before you. An interlocal agreement is allowed in state law to do things jointly among governmental agencies. And so it's a way to do something in a joint effort. And we have been part of Rainier, RCC, Rainier cable communications since 1992. And it originally began with the goal to provide superior cable television services, lower rates to users, foster competition within the cable industry for the purpose of network expansion and channel capacity, and make available better and more diverse services. Over the years, this entity has grown and changed in the services and the things that it does. Initially, Tacoma was part of this group, and they are now just they have a seat, but it's a non-voting seat. Pierce County is the largest entity on the group, and then a number of other cities. We work together, Fife and Ording and other cities such as Puyallup. We work together to do a number of things, and it became apparent that we needed to update our ILA that had not been updated since 1992. We worked on it for 2 years. Councilmember King was, I think, the representative for most of that time. And he, in fact, did vote, because I was there at the meeting, he did vote to approve this ILA by the commission. He's the member for the city of Puyallup. And what we did basically with this ILA is we tried to keep things status quo. So we drafted it to continue to do what we were doing, but to put it into writing and to allow us, give us ourselves the authority to do a lot of these things that had kind of come to fruition over the years. So we have added, since it's the inception of the RCC, we've added the RCC provides franchising advice to the member governments. They've added broadcasting services and education and government broadcasting content, as well as media production services. So PCTV is part of RCC, and we work with them to broadcast our meetings. And they're the government access television producers for the members of the ILA. And they also perform a pretty important service in that they are the direct point of contact for all cable customer complaints, and a liaison for those complaints with the cable companies. They bring us all together to negotiate cooperatively for cable franchising. And so they provide a number of services at this point. This new ILA captures all of that, and it follows the current structure. Pierce County is the lead agency for RCC. This deals with that, addresses a number of concerns that Pierce County had that were not covered in the old ILA. And everybody, I think, at the end of the day was very comfortable and content with this ILA as it finally ended up being adopted by or approved by RCC. Pierce County has now approved it. I was waiting to bring this to council until Pierce County had approved it, because Pierce County's sort of the big dog in the room. And if they don't approve it, then we don't really have any point in moving it forward in its current form. Pierce County has approved it. I know Fife has approved it. Several other cities have approved it. And so it's our turn now to approve it. I'm happy to try to answer any questions, but that's it for a presentation.
Are there any questions by council members? Okay, we're looking for a motion that would go ahead and authorize this interlocal agreement with Rainier Communication. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would like to thank my colleague here to the left, Deputy Mayor King, who, as the city manager shared, represented our municipality on the commission for the last 2 years. I, thanks to you, Mr. Mayor, was appointed to represent our municipality on the RCC at the beginning of the year and was able to participate in my first meeting a few weeks ago. I would urge support from my colleagues here to approve the ILA and, to continue supporting open access to government via TV or television and other services. Or city attorney, what did I say? Oh, I'm sorry, Joe. Thank you, Councilmember King. I mean, Deputy Mayor. And I also just wanted to point out that the RCC also, they're a part of, PCTV is a part of the commission, and they are the ones that really ensure that our technology here that we are able to broadcast is up to date. And I think that we will be seeing some upgrades this summer to our broadcast abilities here. So urge support and thank you again for the opportunity.
And
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I just want to clarify that the motion is for to adopt the resolution authorizing the interlocal.
Okay, stand corrected. Okay, with that, I know you said that Fife had done that, and Pierce County had done it. I find none of those persuasive. I found that Councilmember Adler and Deputy Mayor King voted in favor of it. So now I've changed my mind and I will vote for it, definitely. So with that, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Do we need a roll call or is this just fine?
No, that's fine. There's no roll call required on resolutions.
Okay, so let's move on to number 6, other business, Washington State Legislative Session Review. City Manager Steve Kirkley, take it away.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Steve Kirkley, City Manager. And this evening joining me is Luke Esser, who you all are familiar with, our State Legislative Affairs Consultant. Luke is here in just a moment going to be doing a wrap-up overview of the 2024 legislative session. I just wanted to start out by talking about our capital budget requests. I had mentioned at the last meeting that we'd received funds, and so just wanted to, again, remind you all of the great work that our delegation and consultants and you have done to bring money from Olympia here to Puyallup for 2 important projects, one of which is the Loop Trail. So as you recall, we had requested $500,000 to complete the Loop Trail. This is for a portion of the sidewalk on 23rd Avenue Southwest. That's just west of the Woodbine Cemetery. And so this is the final portion of that Loop Trail that needs to be paved. And so my understanding from our city engineer is that that project will probably start late summer, early fall. So that will be a great celebration to finish the Loop Trail. Then we also received $772,000 for our stormwater project that is part of the bigger economic development plan for downtown and expanding our stormwater capacity for development in downtown. And so this will go towards this yellow portion here that we are still building funding up. We're still quite a ways off from full funding for that, but this certainly is a good seed for future funding. And right now, as everyone is very much aware of, 4th Street there is closed as the city is upgrading that storm to provide direct discharge from along 4th Avenue all the way out to River Road. And that project is set to be done around March, I guess not March, we're in April. Late April, Hans, are we still on schedule for that? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that is, those are the two, we did not receive funding for the Festival Street for the fair. If you remember, that was the other request, that did not receive funding. But I do want to just acknowledge that my understanding is this year there's not a lot of available funds for member capital budget requests. And so we appreciate our delegation, Senator Gildon, Representative Chambers, and Representative Jacobson for their work down in Olympia to fund at least 2 of our 3 projects. So unless there's any questions on those, I'm going to turn it over to Luke Esser, who is our consultant on state legislative affairs, and he'll go through our agenda, our legislative priorities agenda, update you on those matters, and then if there's any other questions that you have of Luke.
Thank you, Steve. Mayor, council members, Luke Esser, appreciate the opportunity. I will go through the legislative issues of importance, the legislative agenda that the council had adopted at the end of last year, and kind of give you the postmortem, the rundown on how things turned out on that set of issues. And the first one was regarding vehicle pursuits by police and supporting legislation that would return the ability of law enforcement to pursue on property crimes and at the reasonable suspicion standard. And that was successful. And kind of take a step back, one of the biggest sets of issues that the legislature dealt with for the entire year were the 6 initiatives to the legislature that had received enough signatures by the end of December to be presented to the legislature. And 3 of those 6 were adopted by the legislature. One of them was Initiative 2015, which was the one dealing with police vehicular pursuits, adopting the reasonable suspicion standard for additional sets of crimes, most importantly, property crimes going forward. The other 2 that were also adopted by the legislature were Initiative 2081, adopting a Parents' Bill of Rights, and Initiative 2111, banning state and local income taxes. The 3 that were not adopted by the legislature and that will go to the voters this fall are Initiative 2109, repealing the capital gains tax, Initiative 2117, repealing the Climate Commitment Act, and Initiative 2124, allowing an opt-out of the WACARES long-term care program at the state. So those 6 initiatives cast a long shadow over the entirety of the 60-day legislative session, and considerable time was spent on that. But they did find time, obviously, for other elements as well. And so moving down the rest of the legislative issues of importance, land use and zoning mandates is an issue that I want to make sure that the council is aware is not going away anytime soon. You may recall from last year, there was kind of a trend started of a lot of setting of development regulations from Olympia that apply to cities on a statewide basis. There definitely is a feeling among many legislators that cities aren't doing enough to foster the housing that's needed. So you may recall last year, bills such as House Bill 1110, which was referred to as the missing middle. I refer to it as the mandatory multiplexes bill that requires every city in all of their areas zoned for residential to allow up to 4 units on every lot. And also the other prominent bill from last year was House Bill 1337, which requires on every residential lot 2 ADUs, attached dwelling units. And that desire continued this year, though there were 3 bills that passed out of the state house that failed in the state Senate. So there still is some level of pushback on some of these bills. The 3 that were most prominent this year were House Bill 1245 with lot splitting requirements that would have been imposed on all cities. House Bill 2252, which would have largely required cities to allow neighborhood cafes in every residential neighborhood, and House Bill 2160, which would have required enhanced zoning designated by floor area ratios in cities above a certain size. And again, none of those bills move forward, but there's definitely a trend of more and more legislation coming forward that would force cities to adopt certain zoning regulations within all of their residential boundaries. And what used to be a bipartisan appreciation for local control has definitely diminished in the last few years in the legislature. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that. To the extent you're concerned, it's definitely an issue that I think city officials around the state should be chatting with their local legislators about. The next set of issues deals with the funding for infrastructure systems and essential public facilities. And there wasn't a lot of action on this. I guess the best that could be said is that there were no reductions, but there were also no real additions in this area. Now, it was a supplemental budget year in Olympia during the short 60-day session, so expectations were low for a lot of issue areas. And the one issue embedded in that that's worthy of mentioning as well is the reference to the 1% cap on state property taxes. And there was a Senate Bill 5770 that would have raised the local property tax cap to 3%. But after facing considerable opposition, that bill died in the Senate Ways and Means Committee. And the sponsors of that bill made it clear that there needed to be more education around the state on the need for that if it was going to move forward in future years. So that proved too controversial to move forward this past year. On the second page of the legislative priorities, continued work on the Blake decision. I think it's fair to say that there was a lot of Blake fatigue after last year. And you may recall that last year, after a full, long 105-day session, the legislature still couldn't reach resolution on what to do with Blake and had to come back for a special session in which they did finally come to a bipartisan resolution on that issue, at least a temporary resolution. But after that, and with the 6 initiatives looming over everything, there wasn't an appetite, at least among the majority of the legislators, to do anything more in the Blake area. So there were no real legislation moving forward there. In terms of funding, not a lot of additional funding. The one area I did want to make note of, there was $2 million in the operating budget to replace some redirected funds that had been taken away from federal burn grants for multi-jurisdictional task forces, which a lot of regional and local law enforcement officials were very concerned about. So that was an area where that funding was restored for those regional drug task forces. Similarly, with behavioral and mental health resources, not a lot added there. Certainly nothing taken away, but no additional direct funding for a designated crisis responder type programs. There was an emphasis on opioids this year, certainly a continuing appreciation for how that epidemic has been getting even worse. And so some marginal increases in funding for education, for overdose reversal medication, and for data dashboards. But again, even for those who wanted more funding, an appreciation that were limited resources available in this year's budget. The next item was a desire to change a restriction on juveniles being allowed to be interviewed by law enforcement, a law passed as part of the 2021 package of police reforms. Severely limits the ability of minors to be interviewed. They can't be interviewed until they are represented by an attorney, whose usually first instruction to them is to say nothing. There was legislation offered to allow parents to provide that approval for the interview, and that legislation did not move anywhere, at least not this current session of the legislature. And finally, on the issue of officer recruitment and retention, there was a bill passed that allows DACA recipients to serve as law enforcement officers, the thought being that would increase the pool of applicants a little bit. And a small matter financially, but one that was appreciated nonetheless, was the tradition has been that for local law enforcements that send their new officers to the basic law enforcement academy, cities had to pick up 25% of the cost of that. Finally, after years of asking, the state has agreed to pick up 100% of the cost of that. So not a lot of money, but symbolic, if nothing else. And the one final item I'll add, that Steve already went over the capital budget. There was a concerted effort in terms of transportation to address a proposal that had been made to the legislature to add significant tolling to the Gateway project as part of the funding for that program. And fortunately, we had on a largely regional bipartisan basis, legislators pushed back effectively on that. There's already an expectation that there was going to be $180 million of tolling to help fund the Gateway project as a whole. There was a proposal to add an additional $160 million that was turned down by the legislature. So the scope of that project remains. No additional tolling is expected at this time. And so that was considered a victory by all the stakeholders who've been working on the Gateway project for all these years. So just a few highlights, but happy to dig into any of these items further or address any other questions you might have. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you for that presentation. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Luke, I was intrigued by one comment. I hadn't heard anything about there was some kind of movement or consideration for neighborhood cafes. Could you expound a little bit on? I've never heard. That's really intriguing to me.
Yes, there's the prime sponsor, who's a legislator from the Walla Walla area. There's a feeling this will enhance the walkability of neighborhoods and reduce the need for people to drive out of their own neighborhoods. If there's this, if there are neighborhood cafes available, the pushback many cities provided was that cities right now have the ability to allow for neighborhood cafes in those neighborhoods where they think it's appropriate. But there's a feeling by many that local control argues in favor of not requiring it in every neighborhood from Olympia. And that's part of this bigger debate on the role of Olympia and statewide regulation versus the role of local control. And that debate will continue in that bill and in others, council member.
Yeah. I have some reservations about the widespread zoning of intensity by state mandate. I am intrigued by the neighborhood cafes. I really think it's intriguing to me. I had never heard of it before. What's that?
2252, House Bill 2252.
Yeah. I want to expound on that a little bit because this is really nothing new under the sun here. I mean, I was just driving by through sections of Tacoma and I saw these remember the little corner stores where you'd have these little teeny corner stores, no bigger than the size of a house, where you had them in different neighborhoods across these, and where people would just go and pick up some bread or whatever. But it was just no supermarket thing. It was just kind of this little deal. I also recall going into old parts of Tacoma and seeing truly small neighborhood churches. You had a church in the middle of a neighborhood. It wasn't like these commercial ones who are they're on their main, runways, but these little neighborhood, smaller churches. And then I also recall seeing neighborhood halls, like fraternity halls that were in these little small neighborhoods. And I think the intent back then is what neighbors were truly being neighborly. They would gather for worship, they would gather for social, they would gather for clubs, and you'd have this kind of pocket of neighborhood gatherings. A current one that I see right now in the city of Puyallup in terms of this neighborhood cafe, which I think is kind of cool, is right down the street from Mayor Castamas' house. When you cross the old Milwaukee Bridge, now the Veterans Bridge, and you come across heading north and you take your first right and you go all the way down to the end of the road, and they have that little cider place in this farm. They serve like cider in this residential area. Cochrans, I think is what they call cockerels. Yeah. And what a cool little place of a neighborhood kind of place to gather and have a pub or a drink, in this case, cafe. I'm really intrigued by this. I don't know, are there cities, I mean, they say part of the argument was, well, we should have a state mandate, and maybe that's a good point. But I guess the question or the bigger challenge is, are cities doing that? And then specifically, is the city of Puyallup doing any work that would give us some indication that we don't need big brother or big sister state to tell us? Do we have any active work that we're looking at trying to open up some neighborhood cafe options within some of our neighborhoods within the city of Puyallup would be the question.
And I can't answer that.
Exactly. Councilmember Johnson, I don't think Luke, I know, doesn't live in Puyallup, so we can't answer that question. I would say if you have neighbors that want to do that, again, we could allow that. We have old neighborhood stores in many of our neighborhoods, but I think that you would find that the reception as it relates to parking and all the other activity would be one of those things that, again, is best left up to us and not mandated by people in Olympia. That would be my take on it.
Oh, yes, concur. But I just wonder if we're doing enough as a city, and that wasn't meant for Luke to answer. It was a rhetorical question to ask the questions for us to contemplate. Are we doing enough to provide for uses of this within the zoning areas that we think is appropriate versus just, having the state come in and say, hey, we need more of this. So anyway, I'm intrigued by this. I would certainly love to see exploration of appropriate city residential cafes or gathering places that maybe had some very strict parking issues. In other words, you have to walk there. You can't have so many drivers there. You limit it to some capacity. I'm intrigued by it. It sounds very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Any other further questions? Well, Luke, listen, thank you very much. We look forward to talking with you before the next session and then giving you lots of issues that we'll be watching, and then we can go through this again. Luke was once a state senator. I served with him in the state Senate. He's very knowledgeable of Olympia and all the different intricacies of Olympia. And you're still sane. That's just absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely amazing.
So far, so good.
Yeah. So again, thank you for the report. Appreciate it very much. If there's no further questions, we're going to let Luke go ahead and go.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Luke. Thank you. With that, we're now going to move on to the reports, and we'll start with the city manager's report.
Good evening again, Mayor. Just one item I want to brief you on the study session next week. So you have not next week, the following week, Tuesday, the 16th, no meeting next week. And then on the 16th, there will be 3 items that staff is proposing to bring to you. One is a discussion on a sewer service area for the Edgewood area. They're within our sewer service area. And so potential discussion and study of that matter. Also looking at our sanitary sewer extensions and how we handle those, another item to study. And then lastly, fireworks. Staff is preparing some general background on that for your consideration and study. So good, hearty study session on the 16th. And that is the extent of my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll now go to individual council member reports. Let's start with Councilmember Johnson. Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased with some of the direction that our city is going in terms of potential. And I went into some elaboration at the last council comments, and we just would like to just reiterate, as we each of us self-reflect individually, I believe that collectively, as we do it individually, we'll find that we're moving forward to become more efficient, more effective, and take our city to the next level. You know, I think that Puyallup has got such a great base, and our potential is so amazing. And we're doing some good things, and we're going to continue to do some good things. But I do believe that our city has the opportunity, with high excellence of strong leadership in the council, moving together with collaboration, that we could really become a model city that other jurisdictions would say, hey, what's going on in Puyallup, and how could we glean, not recreating the wheel, but maybe say, hey, how did you guys do that? What did you do? And so I think the opportunity is just so great. And so I would continue to ask each of us to self-reflect on what can we do better individually, what can we do better collectively, and then to communicate that in a collaborative way, to see if we can't even raise the bar a little higher and become a team that's not just winning, but perhaps a championship team. And there's a difference, you know, and I hate to use sports analogies because I'm not really a sports guy, but there is something about a team of champions versus a team that just have a few wins every season and we're glad to get paid and make a few wins. I think we have a chance to be a champion team of leaders, and as we work together and strive for excellence and stretch the boundaries of, you know, the rut that we live in, which is called, you know, bureaucracy. And this is the way we've always done things. And I think to shake it up a little bit and have strong leadership is actually good for our city, while keeping the integrity and the culture of our city in a very vibrant way, and not wanting to take that but enhance that. So just a continued thoughts on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for those comments. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief this evening. Just want to say that the Daffodil Parade is happening on Saturday, and Puyallup is up at 12:45, I believe. So I look forward to that event every year, and I'm looking forward to participating briefly alongside my colleagues here. Secondly, I just want to put on the record that I will be in Washington, D.C. for 12 days beginning on this Sunday, April 7th. So during the study session, I will be participating virtually I am participating in 2 different fly-in conferences as part of my day job. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castma. So I had the opportunity to go to Meeker Mansion the day before Easter, and it was the very last day of their exhibit for the American Revolution experience, the traveling exhibit. And I think one of the things that I love about Meeker Mansion is that it brings out the Puyallup history of things. And so I just encourage everybody in Puyallup, if you are new to the area, or you've lived here your whole life and you've never gone to the Meeker Mansion, or if you haven't been there in a year, go check it out. They always change up their exhibits, and it, even though it's the same space, there's always something new to look at. So, and I think anybody from Puyallup or visiting Puyallup will be very proud of what they have to offer. Also, I wanted to do a shout out for all the schools preparing to march in the Daffodil Parade. Being a teacher at a local junior high and being in a portable, I hear our students practice out in our parking lot, and I'm very excited to cheer them on, and also an opportunity to be a part of the city. I don't even know what you call it. It's not the city float, the city vehicle alongside my colleagues. So I'm just excited to cheer on Puyallup and of course cheer on our young people. Thank you, Mayor Castma.
Thank you. Councilmember Whitting.
I just wanted to make mention of the completed acquisition of the West property this week. That's something that I've really excited about. It allows us to make the connection between the LaBelle property on the valley floor to the Minnick property, and then further on to the Wildwood Park. So we'll have a connected park network there that will allow people to go up and down the hill and enjoy the benefits of, the people on the valley floor can enjoy the benefits of Wildwood Park, and the people in Wildwood Park can enjoy the benefits of the LaBelle property once we develop it. So a lot of opportunity there, and I'm really excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you bringing that up. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. In addition to, we have a busy weekend here in Puyallup. We have the Daffodil Parade, as mentioned. All Things Fun Sports has their Daffodil Run on Sunday at 9 o'clock. Station 72, Central Pierce, has their open house from 11 to 1. And I don't know, I'm going to look at Deputy Mayor King. I got your name right. Yeah, I think you got called that today. I had seen that Pretty Up Puyallup was considering an additional day for Sunday. I don't know if they did that. Do you know? Are you aware? Okay, so check that out, okay, because there might be an additional Sunday event. But other than that, I have nothing, and except for to say thank you to Luke. I continue to appreciate your advocacy and your availability when things arise. So thank you for being here tonight.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor King.
Sorry, I got nervous there. I tipped over my cup. You called me deputy mayor. Inside joke. Sorry, everybody. Really excited for this weekend. We have the Daffodil Parade, as we've all mentioned, here behind the dais. Lots of great things. We actually do have a Puyallup float that we will be walking next to. And there's actually one spot on top of the Daffodil float for one single council member. And the mayor and I have actually designated Renee to, I'm just kidding. None of that's true. But we're super excited. We will be walking next to the float, representing the city this weekend. And we will be excited to be participating in that. We have a lot of other great things happening. The spring fair is just right around the corner, and a lot of great things. I'm also interested in seeing how we can make Puyallup the pickleball capital of the world. That's intriguing. Anyway, that's all I have for tonight, and we'll see you all in a couple weeks.
Thank you for those comments. They were wonderful. Everyone provided fantastic comments this evening. I can only just conclude by saying that this weekend is really the weekend of memories. And I really, really believe that Renee, you talk, Councilmember Gilliam, you talk about the kids marching bands going through that. That's such a memorable thing that they will remember their entire life. And, I remember as a young boy trying to get a seat in front of Pullman's Five and Dime and having to arm wrestle with everybody to get the ideal place for the Daffodil Parade. And then all that goes along with that, it's really what makes Puyallup so special. And I like the fact you brought up the Meeker Mansion. Just to let people know that when I was very young, little kid, that was painted gray. Very few people ever talked about the mansion. It was just almost kind of a haunted house or an abandoned place that we had in the valley. Now I have to tell you that it is one of the most beautiful houses you will ever see. The restoration of that remember, Ezra Meeker was the Bill Gates of one of the Bill Gates, I guess, of the United States or the region, extremely wealthy. He was the hop king. And that mansion really shows it with all the different types of woods, the intricacies, the workmanship, everything. It is a masterpiece. And what the Meeker Society has done to restore it is just phenomenal. I have never in my entire life seen it so perfect as it is now. So I really do recommend everybody going to that. Deputy Mayor King, you mentioned pickleball, us becoming a pickleball capital. I went to the ceremony last week to open 3 new courts up for pickleball. I played my first pickleball. I think I was wearing a suit jacket and all that kind of stuff, but I played the game and I love that sport. I went ahead, it's the first time I've ever played it. I went to a store and I bought 2 paddles and a ball, and my wife and I are going to start playing. I do understand why people like that game so much. It's a very social game too. You're so close to each other, very competitive. So, Deputy Mayor, if you can somehow arrange us to become the pickleball capital, I'll get in line for that. I just want to conclude by saying that we have a study session coming up on fireworks. And the way I really approach the study sessions is I appreciate all the members acquiescing to that study session. It truly is a study session. I would like the public to show up. I really think it's time we have a discussion, at least where people are at in Puyallup and what other cities are doing when it comes to fireworks. As to whether we actually do anything, I'll leave it up to the council after we learn information from that study session. So I appreciate all the members on board, desiring to sit back and really study that issue. But that's all that it is a study, and we choose what we do based on that. So with that, I will see everyone in 2 weeks, and Lauren will see you remotely. We wish you all the best in Washington, D.C. It's important. I know you do this part of your day job, but we all are government entities, and it's important that, we have people who are very knowledgeable of what goes on in DC, and anything you can glean on behalf of the people of Puyallup is always welcome. And so we look forward to seeing you from that location. And with that, we'll go ahead and end this meeting. Oh my God.